Hey guys, welcome to this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday. Now before we begin, if you're new to the channel, these videos are all about answering your health related questions. So if you have a question concerning your health in general, something regarding nutrition or diet, or really anything related to health and wellness, and you would like our help in answering your questions, all you have to do is leave those questions in the comment section below, and we'll be answering those based on popularity, the questions that we feel will be most beneficial to the whole community, and of course the questions that we are capable of answering. Something else great about these videos is that every week from that comment section below, we select one lucky person, basically at random, to win a free bag of tonic herbs or medicinal mushrooms of their choice. Now, even if you don't have a health related question for us this week, but you're interested in winning some free herbs, all you have to do to be entered to win is just make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, and drop any old comment in the comment section below where we will be selecting our winners. You know you have won because we have responded to your question asking you to send us an email to our email at YouTube. However, with all that being said, let's get into this week's questions. Alright, so let's get to our first question. This is a question that I've seen come up a couple of different times. I'm actually not sure that I've ever answered it, so I figured it's about time I give it some attention. And this question reads, how do you limit your exposure to endocrine disruptors? And what can one do to help the body detoxify from endocrine disruptors? So both of these are really good questions and probably should be more or less phrased as one question as you've stated, because I don't think you can necessarily avoid endocrine disruptors altogether. Therefore, you're probably gonna have to figure out some things you can do to support your body in detoxifying any endocrine disruptors, environmental toxins you've been exposed to. Because as I say so often, unless you're willing to go live in the Himalayas, the mountains of Bulgaria or something, entirely away from civilization, permanently, never really going into modern society and living completely off of the land, 100% naturally, organically, you're bound to come into contact with some sort of endocrine disruptor. And even at that point, they're possibly still circulating through springs and natural rivers, and somewhere you're probably going to be exposed to them at some point in time. So it's good to ask the question, in addition to avoiding my contact with them, what could I do to support the body in eliminating anything I've been exposed to? So with that being said, there are a couple of different things that we should talk about. Answering the first part of your question, to avoid endocrine disruptors is actually quite simple, but it's not necessarily easy. I say this pretty often, simple doesn't always imply easy. So it's actually very simple to avoid them, but it is gonna take some work and it's gonna take a lot of awareness. So the most extreme thing you could do, as I've already stated, is just try to get away from civilization as much as possible. This will help you to avoid most, probably 99% of endocrine disrupting substances. Because ultimately, most of the endocrine disruptors, some of the big ones being parabens, phthalates, stearates, amongst others, but these are a large category, and there's many subcategories within these. These are substances that mimic, they have a very similar chemical structure to things like estrogen and other hormones in the body. So your body confuses them as various hormones. As another example, iodine has a very similar chemical structure to that of fluoride or fluorine, as well as bromine and chlorine. And these are things that you're exposed to on a pretty regular basis. If you bathe in tap water or if you've ever drinking it in your life, you're probably getting exposed to this, or if you grew up on brominated flour products. And this is gonna mimic iodine in your body, which can affect the thyroid gland, which is an endocrine gland. So there's a lot of common endocrine disruptors, but some of the big ones, like I said, are going to be the ones that mimic estrogen and the ones that mimic iodine that interfere with thyroid hormone, but there's many other ones. And the problem is the estrogens in your body stimulate cortisol, so they activate a stress response, and that's the major problem with all of these endocrine disrupting substances. So some of the big ones are the ones, again, that mimic estrogen, and those are most commonly found in the various parabens, phthalates, and stearates, which you're going to find in pretty much every commercial product that you could think of. So as large categories, and many of these having subcategories underneath them, we're talking about commercial skincare and personal care products. So conventional shampoos, conditioners, body wash, face wash, soaps, lotions, moisturizers, makeup, cosmetics, perfumes, etc. Basically anything that you'll find down the beauty aisle or in like a Sally's beauty supply store or something is likely going to contain one or more of these substances, and these are the major estrogen mimicking endocrine disruptors. Another major group or place where you're going to find a lot of these endocrine mimicking substances are going to be in the household cleaning products. Again, the very conventional ones. We're talking about common glass cleaner and tile and surface cleaners, multi-purpose cleaners, and things of that nature. So again, if you walk down, the cleaning aisle in the grocery store, the great majority of those products are going to contain some sort of endocrine disrupting chemical or substance. The other major group, other than these two, personal care products and the household cleaning products, we're talking about the conventional American diet. A lot of the foods in the standard American diet contain phytoestrogens or the polyunsaturated fats, which are very unnatural. We're talking about safflower, linseed oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, soy oil. These things are very unnatural to process and make. It wouldn't be something that's easily achieved if you're living out in the wild. And their chemical structure, being highly unsaturated, causes a lot of issues in the body that disrupt endocrine function, because the unsaturated fats, they actually deactivate the enzyme produced by the liver that metabolizes and destroys estrogen. So if it's inhibiting your body's ability to destroy estrogen, that means you're going to have a greater accumulation of estrogen, thus throwing off the balance of the endocrine system. So that's one way in which they can contribute to the disruption of the endocrine system. But also, a lot of these commercial foods contain herbicides and pesticides that are known to also mimic estrogen. As I talked about in an earlier video a couple months ago, one of the major herbicides that is used actually in study was found to turn frogs into hermaphrodites or homosexuals and completely change or feminize their sexual organs because of how powerfully estrogenic that they were. So that's another major way that the conventional American diet or modern industrial food can disrupt the endocrine system. And in addition to that, a lot of those foods also contain added nutrients or added fillers or chemicals or stabilizers that all in some way or another can disrupt the natural function of the body. As I mentioned, a lot of fortified wheat products and flour products, they often contain added bleach, chlorines, and things like bromine, all which can throw off the functioning of the thyroid. So in fact, a lot of thyroid issues today, that's not really due to the thyroid not working normally. It's not that you don't have a healthy thyroid. It's just a lot of the things in the modern world are increasing estrogen. They're mimicking iodine or mimicking estrogen, or they're causing a stress response, activating the adrenal glands, which suppresses the thyroid. Because remember, the adrenals and the thyroid, they never function at the same time. These two organs or glands work together. The way I look at the adrenal glands is that they're sort of the emergency energy system of the body. So when the thyroid's low, the adrenals get overactivated, vice versa. So if you bring thyroid function up, the adrenals go down. So a lot of the things today, in other words, are disrupting the natural homeostasis of the body by causing a stress response, whether that's through directly stimulating the adrenals or activating estrogen or overactivating the receptors of estrogen or overactivating the adrenal glands. And all these things are throwing off the function of the thyroid, which is basically the master endocrine gland next to the adrenals. So to answer your first question, in summary, to limit your exposure to endocrine mimicking substances, you're going to want to find out where they dwell. Where are they located? And what sort of products and foods and environments are they going to be most abundant, and try to avoid those areas of life or modify them. So in this case, 3 major places to look or to start with would be the personal care products, the household cleaning products, and the diet. If you can start to modify these things, just make them more natural, a little bit over time, you're going to be taking a great deal of stress off of the body in terms of toxicity and endocrine mimicking substances. Moving along, let's get to our second question. This one reads, is pregnenolone safe to take for raising testosterone? So in theory, yes, it would be a good idea to take pregnenolone to increase testosterone, because basically pregnenolone is one of the major building blocks to the precursor of testosterone, which is progesterone. So the basic hormonal pathway for the production of testosterone is, first you have cholesterol. Cholesterol is the key building block of every hormone in your body. Without sufficient cholesterol, your adrenal glands cannot produce any of the adaptive hormones at all. So you typically have an increased reliance on the emergency hormones, as I call them, things like adrenaline and cortisol. And even at that point, if you have low cholesterol, your body is going to be inefficient at producing even those, which is very problematic. So in general, if you're not consuming enough cholesterol, that's one of the major causes of every sort of hormonal imbalance I see. So it's bad enough that we're dealing with tons of estrogens that oppose the production of adaptive androgen hormones, but we are also dealing with tons of stress from every angle. And on top of it, tons of people, due to misinformation around diet, dietary dogmas, ideologies, a lot of people tend to make themselves cholesterol deficient, fearing cholesterol, not consuming things like butter and eggs or dairy or meat or even organ meats. And because of this, they tend to run into all sorts of hormonal imbalances. So I'm not sure of your background or your history dietary wise, but if you're not consuming cholesterol, definitely get some more cholesterol in first. The other thing you're going to want to do is start to increase your intake of dietary vitamin A, which is what synergizes with cholesterol to make all of your hormones, including testosterone. Now, I say this also because before you start taking something like pregnenolone or even progesterone, the thing you're going to want to do is make sure your thyroid's working good. Because if your thyroid's not working good, then these hormones won't be synthesized or converted efficiently. So in addition to taking pregnenolone, you're going to want to make sure that your thyroid's in good shape. Otherwise, what tends to happen if you start taking, let's say, pregnenolone or progesterone, and your thyroid is low, and one basic reason the thyroid might be low other than estrogen and cortisol is that you're not getting enough dietary vitamin A or cholesterol or saturated fat. So if the thyroid's low, what tends to happen is there's a different hormonal pathway that's taken, and the pregnenolone tends to become estrogen or cortisol rather than progesterone and testosterone. So generally speaking, yes, if your thyroid's in decent shape, which you can determine very simply by taking your resting pulse rate every morning as soon as you wake up, as well as your basal body temperature, and then take it again just after eating, and then maybe once again in sort of the middle of the day, and do this every day for like a week, at least 7 days. And what you want to see is a pulse rate between 77 and let's say 88 beats per minute, ideally more in the 80 range. With your body temperature, you want it to be around 98.6 degrees consistently. Anything chronically under these numbers is highly indicative of hypothyroidism. You could obviously take it a step further and check for your TSH, your T3 and T4, your reverse T3. You could also check for cholesterol levels. You could check for prolactin levels and cortisol. But one of the major ways that you could really know if you have thyroid issues is your cholesterol tends to be out of range. So it tends to be low. So one simple thing, again, is make sure that you're getting enough cholesterol and vitamin A to ensure the proper synthesis of that pregnenolone into, ideally, along the line, testosterone. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your thyroid is in good shape overall. And then from that point, you might want to, dive into the research about what form of pregnenolone do you have? Do you have a bioidentical form, a natural form of it? Is it topical? Is it oral? Taking oral pregnenolone compared to a topical pregnenolone could have a different effect, and also the dosage. So let's say you're taking around 50 milligrams of it, and your dose that you're looking for is more of 100 milligrams. It's going to be different on the body, whether you're taking it all at once, or if, let's say, you take 25, every 4 hours, 25 milligrams. And something else to just be aware of is that if you combine pregnenolone and DHEA of good quality, that tends to actually optimize its efficiency or its rate of conversion. So typically, if you have a combination of, let's say, pregnenolone and DHEA, you need a lesser dose. You might get away with only taking, let's say, like 5 milligrams of it, whereas if you're just taking pregnenolone, you might need 50 milligrams of it. So these are all things to consider. What you can do is once you find a good quality one that you want to experiment with and just find out, what I tend to do with anything is I start to read all of the more physiologically sound clinical studies that show all of its different effects, and look for ideally the effects you're looking to achieve and get an idea of what the studies are showing. So let's say you're trying to use pregnenolone to optimize testosterone production. You're going to want to then look and see, well, what dose did the people use, the scientists use to achieve that effect? So other than that, my final considerations about pregnenolone supplementation or any hormone supplementation is that it should be supplemented. You wouldn't want to replace your body's natural production of any sort of hormone. However, you could use quality hormonal supplements in a similar way you might use an herb that helps to optimize the production of certain hormones. So you're going to want to use it for a short period of time just to push the body back into balance and then come off of it. So obviously that's going to require a great deal of attention given to the body, checking for the alleviation of symptoms, or possibly even doing blood work. So these are just a few things to consider. Hopefully it's answered your questions. However, that does bring this week's FAQ and Freebie Friday to a close. Remember, if you are interested in winning some free tonic herbs or medicinal mushrooms, all you have to do to be entered to win is subscribe to the YouTube channel, give this video a thumbs up, and just drop either a question or a comment in the comment section below. Otherwise, if you're interested in learning more for additional information and resources beyond this video, keep in mind that we do have a blog full of wonderful content. We have an online tonic herb shop as well as an online wellness academy. All these things are wonderful additional resources that you can find in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.